Hi everyone! A while ago I asked you on my Instagram and Facebook pages for your opinions and suggestions for additional Violet Flame topics you are interested in. One response was that you wanted to hear about other people's experiences with the Violet Flame. So I took the opportunity to ask a friend of mine to be interviewed and she agreed. Enjoy watching this interview with Valerie McBride. Hello, Valerie. Thank you so much for doing an interview with me about the Violet Flame and your experience. Maybe you can introduce yourself to my audience.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Simone. Again, my name is Valerie. It's Valerie McBride, and I have been studying these teachings about the Violet Flame for a very long time, actually since I was in my 20s. I won't tell you how old I am now, but it's been a long time. And I have a background in education, and I live in Bozeman, Montana. That's this beautiful picture that you see behind me that my husband took this picture as we were hiking in the mountains. So it's been just a wonderful place to live and a wonderful place to experience Violet Flame as well.
Sounds very nice. There's a lot of mountains in Montana, yes.
Yes, there are.
Lots of good energy.
The Rocky Mountains, the mighty Rocky Mountains. Yeah. That's right.
Yes. So how did you get to know the Violet Flame?
Yeah, well, my spiritual journey actually started quite early. I was about 16 and I started reading a book about the autobiography of a yogi, which is one of my favorite books. And from there, I just kept on exploring until I found about the Summit Lighthouse that was teaching about the Violet Flame. And at first it sounded really strange, like how can violet color transmute things, you know? And so I thought, well, okay, the best way to really make this real, to find out if this is real, is to experiment with it. And so I thought I'll just start experimenting. And at first it was just a little bit. Maybe I would invoke the Violet Flame for maybe 5 minutes a day or so and just experience it. And I was finding that I was actually feeling lighter, happier, more joyful. And then it was lifting me up. It was also helping me physically as well. I actually felt a physical improvement with the Violet Flame. So that's how I started getting into it and have been practicing it since.
Did you also find other teachings about the Violet Flame, or did you go or find straight the teachings from the Summit Lighthouse and then just stuck with it?
Yeah, mainly from the Summit Lighthouse, but there are lots of other teachings. If you go to YouTube, you'll see that people around the world are really exploring and practicing the Violet Flame. I noticed that there's a lot of people from South America also that are really using the Violet Flame. So it's universal.
And do you use more mantras or decrees when you invoke the Violet Flame?
Say it was mantras because I was just starting and I didn't really know how. I knew how to do mantras because I love the whole Eastern tradition, because my first book, like I said, was the autobiography of a yogi. And from there, I was just expanding my consciousness about what else is out there in this world. So I would say definitely the mantras was the first try for me.
And today, are you still sticking with the mantras, or are you more prone to use decrees?
I love the simple mantras. I find I've gone through periods of my life where I've done more of the decree work, very intense, but now I am finding that if I can use the mantra, that it can penetrate much in deeper levels, because I'm concentrating on that mantra over and over again, that it becomes so physical and so real.
And I suppose you like singing as well, or music?
Well, if I could sing, I would. I don't have the best voice in the world, but of course, the music is beautiful too.
Yeah. So you've been using the Violet Flame quite a lot, or a long time, and a lot probably.
Yes.
What impact did the Violet Flame have on your life? What changes did you see?
Again, I would say personally, like I talked about physically, I felt better. I felt like my physical body was doing well, and it is doing well through the years. I felt like I said, lighter. I had more joy. But I also began to experiment and work with it and use it in such a way that I could also apply it to my relationships,
Mm-hmm.
to my family, my children, and also to world situations. And that was pretty amazing too.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you have an issue, whatever relationship, you just put it into the wild flame and you see changes happening.
You see changes, but you also see that the other person, in some magical way, that's what it is. I mean, it's like, a magical alchemy of some sort. They also pick up on it, even though they have no idea what's happening. They have no idea what's coming out of their mouths. And yet they are able to experience it because I've experienced, even though they don't even know that I've been doing this. I can tell because there's a change in them as well. And it could be something like the softening of the heart, the heart just being more softened. It could be a little more love in their lives. It could be something easier that was really hard for that person. And I think that's what's the beauty of this violet flame is it's not a selfish thing. I mean, of course, we would just like to have it and use it for ourselves all day long because it's like bathing in this light bath, but I think that it's more of a gift. And it's a gift for humanity.
It is. It is a huge gift. I actually think it's the biggest gift of last century, this century.
I think you're right.
For all of us. Could you share a couple of examples of your experience with the violet flame? And this could be with you, yourself, your personal experience, other people.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you, first of all, one that was just so interesting. And I'll never forget this, but this happened many years ago. My husband and I are from the Seattle area. And we had a house there and our children. And there was a day, it was a Saturday, and we decided to do some violet flame for the Seattle area, also for the Portland area, and also California. So we were concentrating on the West Coast. Okay, so that's Washington, Oregon, and California. And this was something we were doing with a group of other people. They were online. It wasn't like a Zoom situation, although back then we didn't have Zoom, but it was a very similar situation. And so we were in our homes together and we started in the morning and we were going to send violet flame in through and around everything that could possibly be happening that was troublesome to mankind, from crime to, what's happening with the children, educational systems, and also actually working with situations that might cause earthquakes because Seattle is very prone to earthquakes. There's a lot of volcanoes there, volcanic action. I actually, in my younger years, heard Mount St. Helens when it blew. I was close enough, I could hear it.
Wow.
It was amazing. It was amazing. I'll never forget that, the sound of it. And so it was so much power, and you realize the power that's in the earth. And so you think, okay, that's the power that's been given us to the universe. So in the other sense, how can I use the violet flame to help counteract some of those things that may be coming, more earthquakes, or who knows what? I mean, who knows what is coming upon the planet or where, whatever. So we spent the whole day doing this violet flame. My husband and I connected with other people on the computer. And then about dinner time, we decided, let's go grab something to eat. So we went out to get something to eat. We came back into the house, and my children weren't in the house that day. They were somewhere else. But when we came in the house, I opened the door and I walked in, and there was this most amazing aroma, like this scent, like I was in a garden.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like I was in a garden. And I thought, oh my goodness, what did I do? Did I leave one of my bottles of, did I leave a bottle of essential oil open? Is my perfume, what is it? Because I thought it was me. I thought I'd done something. And so I ran upstairs, I went to my bedroom. I looked all over. There were no essential bottles of oil. I love essential oils. They're so beautiful. There was nothing open there. There was no perfume. There was nothing. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is very strange. So then we walked into the living room, and it was permeated in the living room too. That's where we were doing most of our prayers to the violet flame and our mantras. Then I went into the kitchen. I could smell the scent in there. So the whole upstairs was totally permeated with this amazing scent, this aroma, that literally like a garden, but it was something I never smelled. It was heavenly. It was heavenly. So then I thought, okay, the true test is I am going to go downstairs to my children's bedrooms, 3 teenage boys, and with their smelly sneakers, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to open up their doors. And if I smell this wonderful aroma down there, I'm going to be convinced that something magical has just happened to this house after doing a day of violet flame. Okay. I go down there, open up their doors with their smelly, stinky sneakers all over the place. And lo and behold, it was down there too. And so it was in their rooms. It was in the downstairs. It was in the whole house. The whole house was permeated with this beautiful, beautiful scent. And so my husband and I talked about it. We thought, what could this be? What could have caused this? And then we thought, it's just got to be something magical, that like a little gift, maybe the violet flame angels or whatever just dropped this and said, hey, you've been spending the whole day doing this. You did it for to help mankind, to help the cities that you love so much, Seattle and Portland and all of California. And maybe they just said, we're going to just give this to you. Now, I don't know. I don't know what caused it. I don't know how it happened, but I can tell you it was something very, very magical.
Wow. So your husband smelled it as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And did the scent stay for a specific period?
It was gone the next day. It was just that day. Just that night.
Wow.
I know it was, and then I was hoping it would be around the next day.
Forever.
I know, forever. But again, it was a scent that this aroma was something I had never smelled it anywhere. It was something that was so heavenly and so beyond what I would experience here on the planet, even though we have beautiful gardens and we have essential oils and we have all these wonderful things these days, perfumes and whatnot that we all enjoy, but this was beyond it.
And it is so interesting because I've never heard anybody, I heard people saying they can feel the violet flame physically, how they feel better, how they can feel or even see the violet flame, but smell, wow, that is something very, very special.
It was special.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that was one experience. And then there was another one that I have to say that was equally amazing. And I was with a group of people that were part of the Summit Lighthouse. And this was in a university setting, and it was in Ukraine. And so there was a group of Europeans and some Russians and also Americans and Ukrainians. And there was a beautiful setting that they had chosen to have this university. And so I was invited and we went. And one of the things that was happening there in that particular time period, this was in 2010, was that there was no rain for literally 90 days throughout the entire area. And it was bad. It was so dry. It was so very dry and so hot, uncomfortable. In fact, it was so hot, they were saying that, some of the elderly people they had no air conditioning and they were dying, and the morgues were filled in some parts of Russia and Ukraine. And that's how bad it was. And then to top it off, fairly close to where we were staying, a little bit north, was where the Chernobyl, remember the Chernobyl that went off years and years ago? Well, because there were so many fires, going on because it was so extremely hot and the drought was terrible, that they were concerned that the fires would come towards Chernobyl and there would be a toxic cloud that would be released from that. So it was extremely dangerous. So everybody was really concerned. And the group decided they were going to violet flame this whole situation. So this was the most persistent group of people. They were amazing. They would get up very early in the morning and they would start doing the violet flame for the precious, we call them the elementals or the nature spirits, and for bringing down more violet flame into every situation to release this 90 days worth of drought, so there could be some rain. So anyway, they did this for the entire week we were there. We were there for an entire week. And at the end of the week, there was some nice little rituals and closing experiences and music and whatnot. And at that very last hour of the last day of that particular event, all of a sudden we hear crackling outside and we hear something really loud going on, and everybody runs to the doors, opens the doors, and the rains had come after 90 days. And they were so intense. I mean, it was just like a downpour, beautiful. It was so beautiful. Everybody was so happy. People were, I had tears in their eyes. And because, to spend a whole week, praying for this and not having any rain for 90 days, and all of a sudden there it is. So everybody was really grateful. But I have to tell you, here's where it gets amazing. So after everything was done, and we finished out our event, afterwards, one of the Russians came to me and said to me, in his Russian voice, he said, Valerie, he says, did you know that this is the only place there was rain in the whole town? I'm going,
wow.
What? He said that there was a gentleman that was walking through the city where we were at, and he came to this particular fellow and said, why is there rain over this part of the city and nowhere else? He says, I've just walked from the end, one part of the town to the other, and there's rain here, and there's puddles, there's water left now, just you can see because it was sunshiny afterwards. And why, what has just happened? Why is it just here, nowhere else in town? And so afterwards, everybody went and watched the news to see if they were talking about all the rain, and there was no news reporting at all of any rain. They had no reports whatsoever that there had been rain in that area. So again, I wished it would have lasted longer for the people there, and because everybody was under so much stress with the drought. But on the other hand, I wondered if it was almost like a testimony to the people that if you give the violet flame, if you do this, I will show you something, and I will show you the results. And even if it was just for the people there and for the people in their immediate area, maybe that's what was supposed to happen. Maybe that's what the universe was telling everybody there, that, thank you. And the violet flame angels, thank you for giving this, and keep it up. You keep your persistence up. So it was beautiful. All I can say was, it was just an amazing thing. And it really, when these things happen to you in your life, and you get these insights of, the violet flame, it really changes you, and it gives you hope. And it gives you hope for all of mankind. It gives you hope for every weather condition. When you think about the fires that are happening, we've had so many terrible fires here in the United States on the West Coast. And, you think about these things, there is hope for people. Just give the violet flame. It works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is another very physical example that you're telling. That's amazing.
Very physical.
And I'd call it definitely a miracle. And miracles are possible, and with the violet flame, they are even more possible.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Wow. I'm amazed by these examples. And I'm very, very sure you're going to inspire, excuse me, many, many more people who are going to watch this interview to just use the Violet Flame or get started if they haven't yet. Do you have any more examples or?
Well, those are the two big ones in my life. I mean, of course, there's other examples of just like I mentioned earlier, just physically feeling much better, feeling joyful. I mean, if you get in a real rut with somebody, I remember this is kind of embarrassing to say on YouTube, but I'll say it anyway.
It's going to help people.
I know this is a good example, but my husband and I were just a little upset with each other one day and over something petty. It's always these little petty, stupid little things. And we came in and we sat down, we decided, well, let's do some Violet Flame. So, we were kind of growling at each other and grumpy with each other, and we did about 15 minutes of Violet Flame, and we were literally laughing. After 15 minutes, we were like laughing and, we were like almost like giggling together and laughing and, it was just, I couldn't believe it. Like, how can I just go from being so grumpy to suddenly, with him and him with me, to suddenly we're just sitting there looking at each other like, little children, like we're just in love, after 15 minutes of Violet Flame.
That reminds me actually of the same example that I had as well with a friend. We also had, I don't know, an argument, and then we decided to do just a little bit of Violet Flame together. We did, and afterwards everything was perfect again. You're just like, this was nothing. Why am I even upset? And like everything within you changes, and it's beautiful if you have a partner that you can do this with.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips maybe for my viewers that are just getting started on the Violet Flame?
Mm-hmm. I would start very slowly and simply with the mantras. I am a being of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. And give that, but there's so much more to it. Of course, and you've taught this on your channel about the visualization and really feeling it. It has to be dynamic. You just can't lip the words. If you're going to lip the words, don't do it. You just have to put yourself and your full being into it, and know that there are miracles that are being worked as you're giving it, and have that hope and that sense of expectancy that something is going to happen into your world and things will change. And I think that expectation is really important. And of course, the visualization, it really intense visualization, just really seeing it and feeling it, literally feeling it in your being. All of that is what makes the difference.
Mm-hmm.
At least to me, what's helped me the most.
And some people that are just getting started with the Violet Flame are telling me, it's so hard to visualize myself in the Violet Flame, or even situations and, relationships, whatever it is you want to work on. But I feel like, at least this was like for me in the beginning, it's hard because it's something new. You usually don't do it, or I didn't do it before. But then, you do it every day or, very frequently. And you get better at it and better at it and better at it. And at one point, it just becomes normal. It just becomes part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking of this now. You're very familiar with crystals, I believe, as well.
Yes. Crystals is something else that can be used. The Violet Flame can actually penetrate into the crystals, especially an amethyst crystal. And the amethyst crystals are very well known for that because they're the purple violet color, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you take the crystal and you can bless the crystal and with your hands and then send the Violet Flame into it, and it becomes a chalice for the Violet Flame if you want to use it in different parts of your home as well.
Mm-hmm. That is a beautiful tip because I haven't thought of that yet. But yes, crystals, absolutely. They have a very, lots of power, and they can probably change a lot energetically speaking and vibrationally speaking.
Right. And what's really interesting, Simone, I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been studying a lot about health and whatnot. But now the big thing is to eat anything that's purple, like purple cabbage. No, really. They say it's one of the best things you can eat, like purple cabbage, Those purple onions, are supposed to be really good and good for in the quercetins and supposed to be high in all these different vitamins that's supposed to help your body, especially if you are afraid of COVID or whatnot. And so anything that's purple seems to be the new thing that you're supposed to eat. And I'm wondering, I wonder if there's a connection here.
For sure there is, for sure. That's good to know, though. I haven't heard that before yet.
Right.
Great. Well, Valerie, thank you so much for sharing your experience with my viewers. I'm very grateful for you having taken the time to do this, and all the best to you.
Oh, thank you so much. And all the best to you and your viewers as well.
Thank you.